This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Years ago today, shock and awe had begun in Iraq. Donald Rumsfeld's infamous description of America's military might was unleashing its destructive force.
The weapons of mass destruction were never found, but Saddam Hussein was discovered hiding in a hole in the ground. Then came the sectarian killing spree and a daily diet of bombings and chaos.
George Bush insists the war was right and there are undeniable successes. But Iraq's healthcare system is not one of them, as James Bays has been finding out.
5 years after the invasion, and Iraq's healthcare system remains in crisis. Hospitals like this one of the biggest in Baghdad, have to deal with the aftermath of bombs and shootings on a daily basis. It's very hard for doctors to do their job. They often lack basic equipment and the necessary drugs to treat the injured. And many healthcare workers have been murdered or kidnapped. One doctor joked about his situation.
I will make the surgery for you on Sunday if I'm alive. And if I die, God bless you.
The security situation also makes it difficult to tend to patients with non-combat related injuries. Here they're treating 8-year-old Ali, hurt in a car crash. When we make a visit to another Baghdad hospital, it's pretty clear that specialist medical care is severely limited. I'm in the only specialised heart hospital in all of Iraq. At one point they used to carry out 8 open heart operations here every single day. Yet since the US invasion, this hospital has been looted and set on fire, and many of its surgeons have fled the country. The man who ran this hospital 5 years ago is one of those no longer in Iraq. We met him in a neighbouring country.
They started to nominate popular doctors, famous doctors and scientists, right? And either kidnap them or kill them, or delivering a letter to them, warning them that they have to leave. And that happens with me, with my colleagues and everybody. Either be kidnapped and then he paid the money for that, or be killed, or they leave an envelope with a letter, sometimes with a bullet.
Back in Baghdad, the hospital he used to run now only has 150 beds. The other 100 beds were in this block, torched but never rebuilt. In the pediatric ward, we hear 2 harrowing stories. Rasoon Majid tells us that the surgery her 7-year-old son Taha needs to save his life can't be carried out in Iraq. Her husband is missing, captive, and she can't afford to send her child abroad.
He has very strong pains in his chest and can't sleep. He has to sleep on a high pillow in order to be comfortable at night.
In the next bed, a 2-month-old baby boy, Kumail Mustafa. His mother says he too needs surgery outside Iraq, something she can't pay for. We can't stay in a hospital like this for long because of security concerns, but in the 45 minutes or so that we've been here, I've met some people in desperate need, and just as I was leaving the hospital, one of the lab technicians came up to me and said that he feared for his life and asked me how he could apply for political asylum. James Bays, Al Jazeera, at the Ibn Bitar Hospital in Baghdad.
Between massacres and despair, Iraq folds the fifth page of a war started by the U.S. leadership under the slogan of freeing the land of the two rivers. This so-called freedom has changed Iraq into one of the most dangerous countries in the world, with the worst human rights conditions, according to UN surveys. There is a long list of sad stories in Iraq today, and at the forefront is those of refugees. Muna Abu Diab reports.
This was the beginning, the end of a country, and the beginning of its people's tragic tale. At that time, they thought they wouldn't be gone too long, away from their homeland. They gathered what they could carry and moved far away from death and destruction. While waiting to return for the past 5 years, they are left with questions that can only be answered with time.
I was attending school. Around the end of exam time, they killed my brother. I left school and we moved here. I applied to school, but it was too expensive, so I didn't go.
Khulud is a young Iraqi girl. All her wishes are summarized by one statement: to one day return with her family to the warmth of her home in Iraq. More than 4 million people around the world share Khulud's wish. According to the surveys conducted by the United Nations, there are 4 million Iraqi refugees. Over 2 million Iraqis are refugees inside their own country. Over 1.5 million have taken refuge in Syria, 500,000 in Jordan, and the rest are spread out across the world. These people's stories paint a tragic map, but perhaps these stories have saved them from the sting of violence and death. They were made into a sad headline as one of the largest human catastrophes in our modern history. 1 out of every 5 Iraqis is a refugee. 75% of those do not receive adequate nutrition, and 45% live in extreme poverty. These numbers represent people's lives and their stories. They recount the past, lest memories could one day benefit them.
Five years have passed since the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Speaking on this occasion, U.S. President George Bush said that his troops in Iraq have achieved the aims of the war.
But inside Iraq, the anniversary comes without the fulfillment of the promises of security, economic growth, and social development. Instead of living in the paradise of democracy, Iraq is deteriorating in almost every aspect.
The city is drowning in chaos and blood as it remembers the 5th anniversary of the U.S. raid on Iraq. It was on this same day in 2003 that U.S. aircraft struck, announcing the beginning of the war. Not surprisingly, many vital institutions still exhibit signs of the shelling. Since the beginning of the war, Iraq has witnessed more damage than it has in construction. Iraq has drowned and is still entangled in violence.
What has changed? Security? Safety? What? The killing, robbing, and theft? What has changed? We want safety in this country. Safety.
Suffering under the dominion of security breakdowns, deterioration of basic amenities, and occupation, the Iraqis call out. Their call contradicts the words of the person who brought this new reality upon them. Under the slogan of freedom, the U.S. president sees accomplishments in Iraq, which the locals do not see. They only see daily torture. Their lives have been classified by international agencies as possibly the most dangerous in the world.
The statements by the United States President are not true. If anything has been achieved, it is for their benefit, not for us, the Iraqi people.
The anniversary made many Iraqis remember their days under the departed President Saddam Hussein. This demonstration expressed their desire to exchange their bitter reality with their painful past. They began yearning for the time early on, since the multinational forces entered the land of the two rivers.
On the 5th year anniversary of the raid on Iraq, large demonstrations were staged in several U.S. cities rejecting the war and President Bush's policies. Vietnam and Iraq veterans joined the demonstration held in Washington, D.C., calling on the withdrawal of U.S. troops. A similar demonstration was staged in San Francisco, calling for the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq and for President Bush to revise his policies.
A statement made by the Iraqi government called for carrying out the court orders issued against the convicted defendants in the Anfal case.
In a previous ruling, the Iraqi High Criminal Court handed down death sentences for Ali Hassan al-Majid, Sultan Hashim, and Hussein Takriti after they were found guilty of criminal charges stemming from their role in the Anfal campaign.
الحكومة العراقية في بيان لها على ضرورة تنفيذ الأحكام القضائية الصادرة بحق المدانين في قضية.
In a statement made by the Iraqi government, it stressed the importance of carrying out the court orders issued against the convicted defendants in the Anfal case. In a previous ruling, the Iraqi High Tribunal in Baghdad handed down death sentences to Ali Hassan al-Majid, Sultan Hashim, and Hussein Rashid Takriti after they were found guilty of committing crimes against humanity, stemming from their role in the Anfal campaign, which was launched by the former regime against the Kurds in 1988. A few days ago, the Iraqi people marked the anniversary of the Halabja massacre, in which the former regime used chemical weapons, killing more than 5,000 people, mostly women and children, in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Meanwhile, the Iraqi government is seeking to pursue international corporations that supplied the former regime with chemical weapons. In addition, the Iraqi government is working on a draft resolution to be submitted to the UN, urging it to make March 16th, the day of the massacre, an international day against the use of chemical weapons. Moreover, the Government Council decided to subsidize $6 million for public services and reconstruction efforts in the city of Halabja, which was hit by chemical shelling. Reem Ahmed, Iraqiya.
مدينة حلبجة التي طالها القصف الكيميائي. ريم أحمد، العراقية.
أهلا بكم من جديد. عاد أسامة بن لادن زعيم تنظيم القاعدة.
Once again, Osama bin Laden is making new threats. He does this whenever something provocative happens towards the Muslim world. This time he directed his short recording to the European Union. The recording was about the cartoons that were published in Danish newspapers.
To the wise ones of the European Union, peace to those who follow God's guidance. My speech to you pertains to the insulting cartoons and your negligence to take necessary measures to stop their republishing.
زعيم تنظيم القاعدة
Bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, makes new threats. This time, the target of his threats is the European Union, in response to the republishing of the cartoons that defame the honorable messenger. Bin Laden said that the cartoons are part of a new crusade, which the Vatican participated in. In a confrontational manner, he vowed that the Europeans will see the response, not hear it. The Al-Qaeda leader made similar threats on several occasions. In the middle of 2006, he called on his supporters to prepare for a long-term war in Darfur in western Sudan. Despite this, the international forces, which bin Laden opposed, came to Darfur anyway, without facing any challenges from his supporters. The same thing happened in Somalia. Bin Laden called on his supporters to fight its Ethiopian-backed government, and at the time he predicted a quick victory. However, things did not go as bin Laden wanted in Somalia as well. Before bin Laden made his latest threat, he demanded that the Danish artist who drew the cartoons be handed over to Al-Qaeda so that he could be tried. Bin Laden made these statements when the first cartoon crisis erupted and Muslims worldwide protested them. Now he is making threats once again, but some political observers believe that Bin Laden does not have the actual ability to carry out his threats. His threats are nothing more than taking advantage of every crisis that concerns Muslims so that he can keep himself relative in important issues.
A year and 8 months after the end of the Israeli aggression on Lebanon, work has commenced on the reconstruction of the Babda Bridge.
Only 5 months separate the Lebanese from marking the second anniversary of the Israeli aggression on their country. Many Lebanese bridges, including the Babda Bridge, were damaged or destroyed in the Israeli war on Lebanon. Now help is on the way to rebuild the Babda Bridge. This news comes after the Lebanese Society for Local Development stepped in to help the reconstruction efforts in Babda. Today, the City Council of Babda, along with the contracting company overseeing the project, signed an agreement with the Planning and Municipal Division of the Interior Ministry, marking the start of the reconstruction efforts in Babda.
We are very hopeful. The funding we received from the World Bank will help pay for the cost of the reconstruction. In addition, we're working in conjunction with the Planning and Consultation Department to ensure the success of the project.
Due to the efforts of the Lebanese Society for Local Development, which helped remove the undetonated missile under the Babda Bridge, we are announcing the start of the reconstruction efforts in Babda.
They removed the first missile, but there appears to be another missile under the bridge. After taking safety precautions, they removed the second missile. They made sure the missile wouldn't explode and cause damage.
The cost of rebuilding the bridge is estimated at 692 million Lebanese liras. The construction project, which is being funded by the World Bank, is expected to be completed in 150 days. Finally, and after a year and 8 months since the end of the Israeli aggression on Lebanon, work will commence on the reconstruction of the Babda Bridge. One would hope that all Lebanese bridges damaged or destroyed during the Israeli aggression on Lebanon will be rebuilt before the arrival of the second anniversary of this aggression. From Babda, Rana Aweda, NBN.
The president of the National Council on Human Rights, Dr. Boutros Ghali, praised efforts exerted for the protection of human rights by the Arab councils and the international community. He expressed his optimism about defending human rights, calling for democracy and economic development. Ghali's statements came during the 4th Forum of the Arab Councils on Human Rights, which was held in the Algerian capital, Algiers.
At the Algerian Forum of the National Arab Institutions for Human Rights, the participants announced the creation of an Arab network in order to unify the vision in the field of comprehensive human development.
A fundamental idea of the Arab Network for Human Rights is that it does not only concern itself with defending human rights in the Arab world, rather it has the responsibility to defend rights in various places throughout the world as well. Just as foreign countries defend human rights in the Arab world must defend human rights in Latin America, Asia, and Africa.
The Arab Network aims to form blocs which will work to activate dialogue mechanisms and cooperation between Arab countries, while calling for Arab countries to focus on Arab investments, as well as pay attention to all the fields of development, economic, social, and cultural, along with human and political rights.
The right to development is one of the most important human rights. We debate whether there are needs in relation to the right of development in Arab countries. We say and agree that the right of development must be enjoyed by every Arab citizen. However, the right to development in relation to the economy, society, and culture cannot be separated from a citizen's civil and political rights.
المؤسسات يجب أن تلعب دور كبير
The institutions must play a large role in developing the social and economic aspects of life, because Arabs suffer from a lot of different theories and rhetorical propaganda. However, the conference tries to make these theories become a reality through social development in the Arab nations.
The meeting addressed many different issues and cases linked with Arab citizens' rights, as well as efforts which are trying to undermine this priority internationally and shifting the politics.
We cannot discuss development without considering the conditions that the Palestinian society is living under occupation. There are many obstacles in the way of achieving the right to development in Palestine amidst the long and continued military occupation. There are some real obstacles. Our ambition is that the issues regarding the Israeli occupation and its human rights violations gets on the agenda of this conference. Also, we want the final statement at the conclusion of this conference to recommend to the Arab Summit, which will soon be held in Damascus at the end of this month, as well as the Arab League, to take responsibility for the rights of the Palestinian people, which are unequivocal.
Amidst major economic changes, and for the first time, the human rights file will be discussed in relation to the success of Arab development. It will be the most important file on the table of the upcoming Arab Summit. Youssef Suleiman, Nile TV, Egypt News Television, Algeria.
Before departing for the UK for meetings with British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, U.S. presidential hopeful Senator John McCain concluded his two-day Mideast fact-finding mission with meetings with Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and a trip to Sderot with Defense Minister Ehud Barak. IBA's Aaron Viner has the details.
Israel's security was at the top of the agenda during talks between Republican presidential candidate John McCain and Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. Sderot weighed heavily on everyone's minds.
It's a very complex situation, both in the south, and although we are optimistic about our negotiations, in spite of what you occasionally read about, but the situation in Gaza is very volatile, and sure, we are unhappy and would like to talk about it.
McCain voiced doubt that a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians can be reached before the end of the Bush presidency. But he reaffirmed his own commitment to Israel, telling Olmert that the Gaza crisis lends urgency to U.S. involvement in efforts to end the conflict. The 71-year-old former Vietnam POW then joined Defense Minister Ehud Barak for a helicopter ride to the rocket-battered city of Sderot. He said that seeing the situation firsthand was very compelling. McCain made note of the 900 rocket attacks in less than 3 months, on average, one striking the city every 2 hours, saying that the severe stress Sderot residents endure is no way to live.
It's unconscionable that young children should suffer from PTSD from the attacks of as many as 900 rockets.
McCain also supported Israel's military response to Hamas rocket fire, saying simply, quote, "When one is attacked, one retaliates. One has to respond to attacks." Though officially in Israel as a key member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, rather than a successor to the U.S. president, John McCain's helicopter tour is highly reminiscent of that given to then Texas Governor George W. Bush by former Israeli opposition leader Ariel Sharon 10 years ago, which helped forge a deep friendship between the two men prior to the subsequent rise of each to national leadership. This is Aaron Viner for IBA News.
Joining us now from our Tel Aviv studio to sum up Senator McCain's visit to Israel is IBA's diplomatic correspondent Leah Zinder. Leah?
Yes, hi Laura, hi Yochanan. Senator McCain was hailed here in Israel by the Prime Minister, the opposition leader, and all Israelis as a true friend of this country, which indeed he is. He's visited Israel several times. He has a very strong pro-Israeli voting record in the Senate going back a quarter of a century. And in fact, this visit, which is very rare for a candidate during a presidential campaign, provided many photo ops which will help McCain, first of all, with the Jewish vote back home, which, by the way, traditionally is, of course, overwhelmingly Democratic. But even more important to the Senate, I believe, is the evangelical Christian community, which is strongly pro-Israel and has been suspicious of McCain as being too liberal. Now, this visit provided McCain with several memorable images. The visit to Sderot, which I believe we're looking at now, which he made at considerable risk to himself. Aaron mentioned that famous helicopter ride made by Ariel Sharon and George W. Bush. And on this visit, which of course also recalled McCain's own glorious past as a war hero, as he mentioned Ehud Barak's own much decorated military past, it's not only McCain but also Ehud Barak who hopes that this helicopter ride will turn out as well for him as it did for the last two. Laura.
Leah, just briefly, the people accompanying McCain on his trip here were also interesting, weren't they?
Absolutely. Of course, there's Senator Joe Lieberman, who's very popular, as we all know, in the Jewish community, and I believe is being mentioned as a possible running mate for McCain, even though he calls himself not a Republican at all, but an independent Democrat. And then there's the other young Republican Senator, Lindsey Graham, who has impeccable conservative credentials, and I believe those two will go down very well among the evangelical Christians and much of the Jewish vote, as will the fact that Senator McCain refrained from going to Ramallah to visit with PA President Mahmoud Abbas.
There are no more doubts. The matter has been resolved. The Kuwaiti prince dissolved the parliament a few days after the government's resignation. Early parliamentary elections are supposed to be held in 2 months to form a new government and parliament in Kuwait. However, some parliament members have started to prepare for a new confrontation with future ministers if they prove to have the same policies as their predecessors. More details with Ahmed Al-Aounzeh from Kuwait.
Before parliament members completed half of their term, the confrontations and political resentment reached a high level. It became impossible for the government and the parliament to work together, which made divorce the only option. After the government submitted its resignation, the Kuwaiti prince Sheikh Sabbah Ahmed al-Sabbah returned from his personal vacation to accept the resignation and dissolve the parliament.
To protect the unity of the country, and based on Article 107 of the Constitution, I decided to dissolve the parliament. I call on the honorable Kuwaiti people to vote for a new parliament that can fulfill its role to protect the homeland and to develop it.
Some members of the parliament, which now has been dissolved, welcomed the decision of the prince and announced that they will obey it.
We are in the hands of our prince. The crown prince is in charge of the 3 branches. Every decision he makes will be respected and appreciated.
Others, however, said that the government's decision is an escape from confrontation and vowed to reopen all disputed issues if the new government adopts the same policies as the old one did.
I reiterate to the Kuwaiti people that the problem is not in the parliament, it is the government.
Political observers believe that the early elections, which will take place in 2 months, will allow for the creation of a stronger and more transparent parliament than the old one. Dissolving the parliament was an act of mercy, since its insolvable problems became a burden on Kuwait. Ahmed Al-Aounzeh, Dubai Television, Kuwait.
Ahmed Al-Aounzeh, Television, Dubai, Al-Kuwait.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.